You're sitting at a dinner table. Your phone is face down. Your family is right there. Your mom is talking. Your dad is nodding. Your sister is laughing. And somehow, despite being surrounded by every person who loves you, you feel completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. That feeling you just had? That hollow, quiet, suffocating kind of loneliness in a room full of people? Ancient humans never felt that. Not once. Not ever. And the reason why will genuinely change the way you see your entire life. Let's go back. Way back. Not to history class back. To the kind of back where there are no history classes, no classrooms, no buildings, no cities, no roads, no nothing. Just open land, cold wind, and about 30 people who smell terrible standing very close to you all the time. That was life for roughly 300,000 years. You weren't checking on your family. You were never more than 10 feet from your family. You didn't call your friends to hang out. Your friends were already there. They were always already there. Whether you liked it or not. And spoiler alert, sometimes you absolutely did not like it. There was no personal space. There was no my room. There was no closing a door and lying on the floor dramatically because life was too much. If life was too much, everyone around you immediately knew because they were watching your face from approximately 3 feet away. Imagine having a bad day. Now imagine having that bad day with 30 people sitting around you, watching you have it, offering unsolicited opinions and sharing the same blanket. That was Tuesday. That was every Tuesday. 300,000 years of Tuesdays. And somehow they survived. Actually, more than survived. They thrived. Because something about that closeness, that constant, unavoidable, sometimes irritating human contact, was exactly what kept them alive. Here is the part that nobody talks about. Ancient humans didn't just live together. They thought together. Every decision was communal. Where to move camp. What to hunt. Which berries were trying to kill you this week. Nothing was decided alone because nothing could be. One bad call could end 30 lives. So the group became like a single organism with multiple brains all running at the same time. Annoying? Absolutely. Effective? Shockingly, yes. Anthropologists call this distributed cognition. Basically, the group thinks better than the individual. Which is humbling when you consider that most of us today make our biggest life decisions while alone, in the dark, scrolling through a phone at 2 a.m. Now let's talk about emotions because this is where it gets genuinely wild. Ancient humans didn't have therapy. They didn't have journaling. They didn't have a coping mechanism, or a healing journey, or a wellness podcast with 4.8 stars and a slightly annoying intro jingle. What they had was each other. When someone was grieving, the whole group grieved with them. When someone was afraid, the fear spread through the camp like electricity, and everyone prepared together. When someone was joyful, that joy was shared immediately, physically, loudly, around a fire, with dancing that would probably be embarrassing by today's standards but looked absolutely incredible in the moment. Emotions weren't private experiences back then. They were communal events. And here's where it gets funny. Or sad. Or both, depending on how self-aware you're feeling right now. We have spent thousands of years building walls, both physical and emotional, specifically so that nobody can see us fall apart. We built houses with rooms. We built rooms with doors. We built cultures where you're supposed to say, I'm fine, even when you are, in fact, so spectacularly not fine that you cried in a parking lot last Thursday for reasons you can't fully explain. We engineered our entire civilization around the idea of hiding how we feel. And then we hired strangers and paid them money to sit in a quiet room and listen to us talk about how we feel. Ancient humans would find that absolutely hilarious. And also deeply concerning. Let's talk about children for a second because this one is actually shocking. The concept of a child having their own bedroom, their own space, their own private world decorated with posters and filled with things that belong only to them, is so new it barely counts as history. For almost all of human existence, children slept next to their parents. Not in the next room. Not down the hall. On top of them. Literally on top of them because that's where the warmth was. A child being alone at night was not building independence. It was a crisis. It meant something had gone wrong. The community had failed. And now we put babies in separate rooms, pat ourselves on the back for being progressive, and then spend the next 18 years wondering why our kids don't talk to us. Agriculture changed everything. Around 10,000 years ago, humans figured out that instead of chasing food across the landscape, they could just make food stay in one place. Brilliant. Revolutionary. Also, accidentally, one of the loneliest things we ever did. Because farming meant staying put. Staying put meant building permanent structures. Permanent structures meant walls. And walls meant, for the first time in the entire history of our species, you could be physically separated from other human beings in a way that was both intentional and permanent. One door. That's all it took. One door changed the entire psychological architecture of what it means to be human. One door and suddenly you could be alone. And we loved it. For about 5 minutes. And then we invented neighbors just to have someone to complain about. As villages became towns and towns became cities, privacy became something people actually wanted. Not needed, not required for survival, but wanted. Desired. Romanticized. The wealthy built bigger homes specifically so they didn't have to see each other. The merchant class fought for separate bedrooms. By the time the Victorian era rolled around, privacy had become a status symbol. To be alone was to be important. To have space was to have power. The richer you were, the less other people you had to deal with. Which honestly still tracks today. Look at the difference between a studio apartment and a penthouse. The penthouse is really just a very expensive way to not see people you don't want to see. But here's the dark side. And there is always a dark side. As privacy became more available, something else started disappearing. Something subtle. Something that ancient humans had in such abundance they didn't even have a word for it, because you don't name things you can't imagine losing. Connection. Real, physical, imperfect, loud, sometimes smelly human connection. The kind where someone can see on your face that something is wrong before you've said a single word. The kind where you don't have to explain your pain because the person next to you already felt the earthquake the same moment you did. That kind of connection. The kind we now pay for, chase after, swipe right looking for, and still somehow manage to miss even when it's standing directly in front of us. Studies today show that loneliness is more dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Let that sit. We have anti-smoking campaigns, warning labels, social stigma, school programs, all of it, dedicated to stopping something that is technically less damaging to your health than simply not having a person to talk to. We built a world so efficient at separating people from each other that we've created a public health crisis out of the basic human need for company. Our ancestors would not believe this. They would not believe that we live in buildings stacked on top of each other, 200 people in one structure, and don't know the names of the people directly above and below us. They would think we were describing a punishment. There is something in us that still reaches back. You see it in the way strangers become friends during power outages, suddenly standing in the street, sharing candles, laughing about nothing. You see it at funerals, where people who haven't spoken in years suddenly hold each other like they mean it. You see it in sports stadiums, 80,000 people screaming the same thing at the same time, and for one moment no one is alone. You see it in the way a song comes on and everyone in the car goes quiet because everyone in the car feels the exact same thing and nobody has to say so. These moments aren't accidents. They're memory. Genetic, ancient, bone-deep memory of who we used to be before we got very sophisticated and very lonely. So here's the real question. The one that sits underneath all of this. We built walls to protect ourselves. We built distance to give ourselves peace. We built privacy into the foundation of modern life because we genuinely believed we would be happier alone, on our own terms, in our own space, free from the chaos and noise and constant presence of other people. And we got exactly what we wanted. Every single bit of it. Private bedrooms. Private bathrooms. Private cars. Private screens. Private thoughts we never share with anyone. We got every wall we ever asked for. And now we lie in those private bedrooms in the dark with the door closed, completely alone, and quietly wonder why something feels so terribly, undeniably wrong. Ancient humans had something we have forgotten how to name. Not happiness exactly. Not comfort. Something older than both. A sense of being witnessed. Of matching in real time. Of knowing that if you disappeared, 30 people would notice immediately, not because of a missed notification, but because you were just there, right there, visible and present and irreplaceable. That is what the walls cost us. Not our freedom. We kept that. Not our privacy. We got more of that than we ever dreamed. What the walls cost us was the certainty, the quiet, unspoken, daily certainty, that we were not invisible. For 290,000 years, no human being had to wonder if anyone would notice they were gone. Then we built walls. And some of us are still waiting to find out.